Now, I covered an article similar to this, but it was from the standpoint originally of a man who put out on the internet that he didn't wear a mask. So this is basically for a lot of individuals in the era of cancel culture. This is what happens, right? And so when people become fearful, and this is primarily in America where men don't stand up primarily for what is right. In today's era, because of Americans devaluing masculinity, because of basically creating, in essence, a system where men are kind of expendable for the most part. And women, of course, we live much more in a matriarchal society. But at the end of the day, the government, in essence, becomes the husband for many of these women. And for the most part, the government becomes the father for many of these children. And in my last video, like I said, there was a father who stated that he had put out on the internet that he didn't wear a mask. As a result, his ex-wife used that information against him, and he ended up losing a bit of custody of his child. He was not able to see his child. The child was not able to come to his home, and he was only permitted to see the child in an area where, he obviously was forced to wear a mask, and of course he was being observed for the sake of the child. But in that same video, I will link at the top, there was also a woman who had the exact similar, or I should say a similar experience, and she too was not allowed to see her 15-year-old son because he had asthma and she didn't wear a mask. Now, this is a New York City doctor. It says exclusive NYC judge removes 6-year-old from mother because she didn't wear a mask while dropping her off at school. Right, it says a New York City judge has removed a 6-year-old girl from her mother because she didn't wear a mask. This is in a shocking and egregious move. The court also told Dr. Epstein, which is her, that in order to get short supervised visits with her child, she would have to wear a mask inside her own home. Right, so it's very important to understand that this is the route that the country is going to be going. And the reason being is because no one does anything. So we're looking at it from a male perspective, just from the female male perspective. When a man starts to exhibit weak traits, women will typically lose respect, and as a result will start to shit test men. But the shit testing is basically to get you back in line to being the type of person that you are supposed to be as a man. When men who are confused and don't understand this, they start basically trying to pursue the woman, and as a result they continue to shit test you upon shit test until they completely lose respect for you. And you've seen some men go through some of the most ridiculous sorts of behavior, and you wonder, why would you put up with that? The government views it from the exact same standpoint. When men of the nation don't do anything and the government just perpetrates one crime after another against their rights, eventually the government will lose total respect for the people with which that they are responsible for, and they will basically do whatever it is that they feel they want, which is why you see even in places like China, where they're literally swabbing Americans who basically travel to China now have to get an anal swab for the pandemic, right? So if any Americans, and they were doing that to like the embassy, they were doing that like to the officials, they were literally swabbing their asses so that they could test them for the disease. It just goes to show you the level of disrespect that can be had when individuals do not exert their self-respect, and as a result, this is what happens. It says it was a normal day for Dr. Micheline Epstein, family physician, when she went to drop her daughter off at the Lenox Hill School on the Upper East Side last week, which is not too far from where I live, until her entire life was turned upside down in an instant. The tearful mother explained in a phone call that her daughter was already inside the building and wearing a mask when the school nurse and school security attempted to force the doctor to wear a mask while she was on the street, right? Because while she was on the public street in front of the school, and it says the doctor says, "I don't need a mask." And it goes on to say the mother explained that the nurse had came out and was aggressively demanding that she put on a mask, but she was already leaving and did not accept it. The next thing I know, my daughter was taken away from me, she cried. And on a rare occasion, when coming home from my shifts, I would have someone tell me, or when I was on my way to work, someone would say to me, you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're supposed to know better. And my question is, if you perceive that me as a medical personnel should know better, and I'm not wearing a mask outside, then maybe you should be thinking about that. Dr. Epstein is separated from her daughter's father, and they had a shared custody agreement where the child split times between the home equally. It says divorce, however, has been bitter, like most divorces nowadays are. It says following the confrontation at the school, it says that the doctor left, but has soon found a letter from the expensive college prep school sent to her. It says her estranged husband and the attorney for both parties, right, for the attorney for the school and the attorney for an attorney for the husband. It says the school was demanding that Dr. Epstein was no longer permitted to drop off her child from the school. It says it says if that wasn't bad enough, father used the notice about the mask situation to request an emergency hearing for full custody, which the judge granted after berating the already emotionally devastated mother. Additionally, the court decided that the mother is not permitted to remove her daughter from the expensive school. Now imagine that you are paying for this school, or you're paying for the tuition, and the judge says that you can't pull your child out of the school because if you decide, you know what, I'm not going to do business with you anymore. This is a very dangerous precedent where the company basically gets favored over the individual who is the purchaser, right? You are the customer, and you're saying, well, I'm going to take my business someplace else. And then the judge comes around and says, sorry, you can't do that. And so she is currently working 3 jobs to pay not only for her daughter's expenses, but the 6 lawyers she hired to fight what she is referring to as the kidnapping of her child. On Tuesday, Dr. Epstein was not permitted to see or even speak to her daughter, even though it was her 6th birthday. To get 2 supervised visits with her daughter per week, she needs to wear a mask inside her own home. Dr. Epstein said that those who wish to help her can support her in this area with a Go fundraiser. It says the only thing that I want is for people to stand up already and stop with this nonsense. As Dr. Epstein said, this is still attempting to mask that she has been crying but unable to contain the complete heartbreak she is feeling. And that's basically it for this article. I'll leave the link for the article down below, but I don't expect to not see more of this going forward. Not only that, more than likely you will see companies start to take this stance with many of their employees. As I have said, that the narrative is for you to get the vaccine. And if you're a person who doesn't own your own business, or if you're someone who is dependent upon the government, this is the outcome. Unfortunate for this doctor, who has probably taken care of many of these individuals who have become sick. This is what the thanks that she get. If anybody would know whether or not they need to wear a mask on the outside, it would be the doctor, especially over some of these very emotional nurses. But unfortunately, this is the route that the country is going, and I have no doubt that this will continue going forward.